the quality of our test ideas weren't good enough to get performance, right? So just this idea that you could A/B test different creatives, different user behaviors with AI and get the results back instantly. And I was seeing really good results. I was seeing that I was actually changing my mind about different creative decisions. There's a lot to explore in this space. So
You are listening to Full Funnel.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Full Funnel podcast. I'm Rohit, your host and guide to everything in the ever-evolving world of AI-first marketing. Today we are joined by Mike Taylor, an marketing industry veteran and the founder of AskRally.com. Mike, it's awesome to have you here. I've been following your work for some time online, on LinkedIn, love your content. And I see that now you're kind of like innovating in this AI space, specifically in the market research space. Really love that. Please introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your background, and tell us more about Rally.
cool. Yeah, it's good to be here. And always happy to talk about AI and marketing and all these things that I can never shut up about. But yeah, I was describing myself as a recovering agency owner recently because, growing the ladder to 50 people over 6 years took a lot out of me. And I was in New York for half that time. I think you're in New York as well.
Nice.
So there's a lot of energy, but also quite tiring, So I left about 2020 and got into AI. I was just lucky to, when I left the agency, I was kicking around looking for stuff to do, and then I got access. I think it was Copy.ai was the first thing I got access to, and I was like, okay, what's powering this? GPT-3, and then kind of went on that train. So over the next few years, kind of transitioned into being a prompt engineer or AI engineer. And then wrote a book on prompt engineering last year for O'Reilly.
Right.
So that was, kind of all the stuff I'd learned over the past few years. But then I just really had a lot of appetite to build my own AI product rather than working on other people's. So started Rally in January. It's just like kind of a script initially. I was just really interested in the synthetic research space, and we could talk pretty deeply about that. But just this idea that you could A/B test different creatives, different user behaviors with AI and get the results back instantly. It really tickled my fancy, to see, you could do that. We were banging our heads against the wall, A/B testing everything at Ladder. For years, so like I immediately saw the value in this sort of approach. So that was what kind of got me into the journey.
Amazing, super interesting. I'm an ex-agency owner as well, so completely understand that pain point of trying to essentially figure out who you're going to target, what kind of creatives are going to work with them or resonate with them, and that's a long process typically, right? So that's super interesting. Maybe you can take us back to the moment of where you really realized that, waiting all this time for survey panel insights or focus group insights was essentially killing good marketing ideas, right? And at the pace of how consumers behave today, what's that moment that really pushed you over the edge and really sparked that idea of what you want to build for Rally?
Yeah, good question. So we actually weirdly didn't do a lot of consumer research at Ladder. We're a performance marketing agency, and I think it's actually really underused by performance marketers. I think traditional marketers maybe overuse it. So it's some fine balance in between. But typically we would A/B test stuff. More and more, what I was finding as we were testing different things, we'd see that the quality of our test ideas weren't good enough to get performance, right? So that was what really got me into qualitative research and understanding. Okay, let's do surveys, let's do user testing, because you can see that version A beat version B of this landing page or this ad, but you don't know why unless you look into the qualitative side of things, right? So it helps you form better hypotheses for your A/B test, and that was what got me really deep into it. And then when I saw that AI was really good at role playing, it made me think, okay, well, I could get it to role play as one of my customers, right?
Right.
So, I was, and every prompt you write as a prompt engineer, it always says like, as this person, go and do this, right? And it just works really well. So I was getting its role play as a single customer. And I thought, okay, hold on, like it's AI, it can do much more than this. So let's
Indeed.
role play as 5 different customers or 10 different customers. And over time, I built some scripts to start to really simulate a whole audience and say, okay, 100 or 1,000 AIs think, wisdom of the crowds type approach. So when I was doing that, I was seeing really good results. I was seeing that I was actually changing my mind about different creative decisions. I was looking for a business to work on, and I was using that script that I'd written to decide whether I should do one business or another. What do people think of this? Like, is there an opportunity in this segment or in this space? And then I was like, wait, hold on, this is the business, right? So that became Rally, and then I built a front end for it and launched it in February.
Awesome. That's super interesting. That's pretty cool. Sounds amazing. I'd love to try it out as well.
Yeah,
I've
sure.
seen some other players like popping up in the market here and there. Not really sure exactly whether they're like your competitors or something like that, but are they like
I've actually talked to a few of them. So like Hugo is a great guy at Synthetic Users. He's actually been super helpful, putting me in to different papers and stuff that were interesting to read. But yeah, like the industry is very early, so we're all fighting against the same thing, which is inertia. Traditional agencies don't yet trust synthetic research, although they're all exploring it. There's a lot of promise there, right? Like if you could do it in an instant without taking 2 weeks to do a focus group, and you can get that done for 1,000th of the cost, then that's great. But I think it's going to take some time to educate the market, and also just to mature as an industry for us all to kind of find our space. Like we've all kind of attacked the industry in a different way, so I don't really see these guys as competitors so much. Just more like we're all hypotheses. We're all trying to figure out what's going to be the final form of synthetic research. And actually, is synthetic research the right name for it? Like I'm kind of leaning more towards the like virtual audiences or audience simulator. I like the idea of a simulator. Because as someone told me the other day, like, who wants a synthetic diamond? It's like, I think there's a lot to explore in the space. So really, it's just and everyone's super nice. So it's like not. I always encourage people to try all the different options.
100%. I think in the AI space, everyone's like opening and still exploring, so it's still up there. That's awesome. As an entrepreneur, I think it's always nice to hear the origin story of how you actually came up with stuff. So let's dive a little bit more into the product itself. So essentially, you're trying to help marketers kind of speed up this process, right, with a synthetic audience, and that kind of mirrors real kind of audiences, right? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about how it works and what's like the secret sauce to get that right.
Yeah. So the thing it's really good at right now is getting feedback on ideas. So you can create an audience that matches who you're trying to target. Like if it's procurement managers in B2B SaaS in Egypt or whatever, like you can go pretty niche with the stuff. And then you can query that audience. So it's an interface similar to ChatGPT, except you're chatting to many GPTs at once. So you get not just one response, but you get between 5 and 100 responses, and they're all individual in that they each have their own persona that's unique. So what you get back, instead of what the average of the internet is like type of response you get from ChatGPT, where it's like just the obvious stuff maybe. Instead, you get a bit more of a diversity of opinion, and it doesn't sound like AI because we've worked quite hard on making it sound more human, making it more realistic based on real human examples. So that's the thing it's pretty good at. Like the vision is wider than that. Like I'd love to simulate entire parts of the economy. Like I'd love, for example, to seed a message into my AI agents and then see where that message spreads, and
Right.
how often they decide to buy the product based on who got the message and who didn't. There's a lot of experiments running in the space. But yeah, for now, I would say the accuracy of predicting whether an ad is going to be successful or not isn't as good as predicting what people would say about an ad. Actually, it's very good for that. Like when I look at the comments they make and then I look at the comments in real life, they line up pretty perfectly. But one of the things I would say is, at least with a lot of synthetic research, is most of it's not published, right?
Yeah.
So everyone claims like 80% accuracy or whatever, and it's actually, it's like you really need to know like what did they test and how did they test it, because
of course,
like all things, like for example, I'll give you a recent example. We ran an experiment with some Facebook ads. Like we took some real Facebook ad data and then we tested it against a rally audience, and it did guess the winner most of the time. So you could say like it's 80% accuracy. But if you look at the distribution, it was like 90% of the AIs voted for the winner. So it was like too confident. Whereas like if you look at the real world data, the votes are spread across the other options more evenly.
Right.
So I would say there's still some kinks to be worked out on predicting behavior, but it is very good at predicting like feedback essentially.
Interesting. So yeah, that's interesting that you're trying to get it kind of like close enough, right? So when do these kind of like synthetic audiences essentially results kind of diverge from most human tests, right? Like how do you decide when is what is close enough to ensure that you can ship those creatives, right?
Yeah, good question. I would say that if you're not doing any market research, this is a great way to just get started with it, because it's just a way to get out of your own head. Quite often, it doesn't have to be 100% accurate to be useful, because quite often what I'm doing is I'm running, like say every time I post on LinkedIn, I'll put that through Rally first, and then I'll say, hold on a second, I didn't think about that angle. Like this one persona is saying that people are worried about AI being bad for the environment, and I'm like, I didn't think about that because I don't believe that's true. But but I can see that other people might think that, so maybe I need to address that in the next post or something. So I think that's what it's really useful for, is kind of questioning your assumptions, getting like, because you are not your own users, you are not your own customer quite often. So it can just help you think about what language they use, think about what they care about that's different from what you care about.
Yeah, I think that's the best use case for AI in general as well, right? You're kind of always bouncing ideas off it and, triggering some of these things that you might not think about.
Yeah.
So what's the current feedback like from your early customers, like using this approach? Is there much pushback, or are they, enjoying it?
Yeah, good question. So I would say that people who are like founders or product managers or marketers are really finding a lot of use in it. Like if they're in an operational role in particular, this just decreases your chance of making a mistake and increases your chance of finding something good. And it's a very limited amount of lift, to get that, because you're just uploading an image of your ad, or you're just pasting in some text and then running it. And then if it just gives you one good idea in every 10, it's like worth $20 a month, right?
100%.
Whereas I would say if you're a traditional researcher, there's a lot of interest about AI, because they're all being told by their boss they need to be using AI more. But there's also nervousness, because they're like, is this going to replace me? How am I going to charge for like a $100,000 study if like it only costs $100 now? So I think to their credit, they are very interested and have been very open in trying to like work with us to figure out best way to kind of build trust. But I would say right now it's more of like a custom project to convince a market research team.
100%.
Like we did a big project recently with one of the big agencies like Holden Co's, and that was like a big project. So it was like,
Right.
we did 5,000 personas,
Hmm.
in a specific industry, and
Interesting.
it was like a 25 question survey that we ran, and we went through all sorts of checks and balances and stuff. So I would say, because there is a lot of skepticism, it
Hmm.
needs to actually be a relatively big project to
Yeah.
be to pass the tests, internally, from procurement point of view, from a
Hmm.
so I would say we're still quite far away from traditional market researchers using this self-service, but
Yeah.
I think some of the other people in the space have maybe made more strides on that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's just fascinating to see where things are coming, and I think, as with any tech, right, it's just going to take time to evolve, and people are going to start adapting to it rather than worrying about their job, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's just so much innovation left in the space. I think, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
and I
you
think
mentioned, yeah.
even some of the other providers, even if they have self-service
Hmm.
versions, well, from what I understand,
Yeah.
for most serious use cases, they're doing it as a custom project as well. So, like,
Right.
Evidenza, for example, is like a big player in the
Yeah.
space. They
Yeah.
work with like big governments and things like that, and there's, all
Hmm.
the big agencies. Apparently, it's just slides they send you. Right? So it's like, so it's like no. I mean, they do have an interface for some things, but then,
Right.
but for the custom projects where you have to kind of prove accuracy, it's a different story. So yeah,
Interesting.
it's a good example of how I think, like, the industry is maturing. Like, nobody has
Hmm.
the full best practice yet. We have made a lot of inroads, and it works really well out of the box. I would say, like, you can even just get like 60% accuracy without any
Yeah.
fine tuning, without any calibration
Interesting.
to real world data. But to get to that 80-90% that clears the hurdle, then
Hmm.
I think that's usually more of a custom job.
Interesting. So, on like the other side of the spectrum, you've got these folks who are doing like AI generated creatives, right? I think you mentioned, like, you suggested that 5 strong creative variations are better than like 1,000,
Mm,
for example. Right? People are trying to hack it through the 1,000, but they're very sloppy ones.
yeah.
What are customers saying, like in a real life example, when they log into the platform? How
Yeah.
is it fitting in that workflow, and how do you see it? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's something my co-founder Reese, he's been banging on, like, hey, more people use it if we create the creative as well and then test it. And I just don't believe that it's good enough at,
Okay.
at creating creative yet.
Right.
I mean, I use it all the time as a partner in creating creative. Like, I'll use the
Mhm.
image generation models
Right.
to generate images. I'll
Yeah.
use the the like text generation models
Yeah.
to ideate, like, come up with ideas for copy. And
Mhm.
but I would say AI is much better at evaluation than it is at creation.
Right.
So, the way you think about this is that AI is already as good as the average person. So if you're trying to figure out what the average person will think of your campaign, then AI is great at simulating that person.
Right.
But AI is not as good as the best copywriter, or it's not as
Right.
good as the best strategist or the best designer. So,
Right.
I would say we still have an advantage there as humans. And so a good example of how this plays out is
Mhm.
you have you have, like, say, Timu, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're the largest advertiser in the US up until the tariffs recently, and
Yeah.
they're generating millions of ads, and they're all automatically generated.
Yes.
And they're spending a ton of money, but look at any one of those individual ads, and they're terrible, right? Like, they
Terrible.
look
Yeah.
awful. No shade on them, because you can't create that many ads. They just
Exactly.
throw it all out there, and, like, if it works, it works.
Exactly.
But then think about a company like Guinness, right?
Mhm.
Good things come to those who wait, right?
Yeah.
That's been the tagline for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that has made the company billions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And so the very best copywriters can come up with some big idea like that, where
Yeah.
that one idea is worth it's not just worth 100 million Timu ad ideas.
Yeah.
It's actually, the Timu ad ideas will never get performance that good.
Exactly.
Even the very best, and I see that with AI as well. Like, AI can get you to a pretty good average ad idea. So if you're
Yeah.
not good at advertising, then you should use AI. But if you're really good at advertising, or you're working with someone who's very talented, you can hire an agency that can do it.
Mhm.
I still think you can get outsized results, and because the results are exponential,
Yeah.
the best ad will typically drive 80 to 90% of all of your performance. That's something I found again and again with Ladder. We would test thousands of ads, and then there'd be one that drove 80, 90% of the traffic or
100%.
the sales.
That's common across all brands, I guess. That's something we do at LifeSite, right? We're trying to essentially help brand marketers get more budget for essentially brand marketing, like what you mentioned about Guinness earlier, rather than trying to flood the zone with performance ads. And so I think the trend is shifting. A lot of people are understanding that value to essentially acquire new incremental customers, right? Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about prompt engineering, since you're the expert on that. I'm sure our listeners would be, very interested in learning, some tips and tricks on how to essentially write better prompts. You mentioned that it's, prompting is more important than the actual models themselves. Can you give us an example of like a before and after prompt to get like realistic feedback from a specific persona?
Yeah, so there are a lot of tricks to do with prompt engineering, right? And as the models get better, the fewer of those tricks you need. So what I say to people who haven't done much prompt engineering and you're not like at the cutting edge where you're like running an AI app in production, you need to use all these hacky tricks, right? Because like, changing the word can decrease your cost by 15% or whatever, like I think like when you see people who are like, oh, here's my mega prompt, and it's like, it looks like a witchcraft, it looks like some incantation that they're trying to curse you with. Then I think that person is not for real. That usually tells me that they haven't actually done much real work in AI. So I'd say all of the people I know who have gotten real world results from AI, they really just focus on two things. One is the instructions at the top. So just very clearly stating what do you expect the AI to do. And then two is the context that you give it to follow those instructions. So what from your data, what can you give it? Like what types of information would you need to give an intern if you're asking an intern to do this job? And then how many examples you can give the AI of a task well done. And I would say that the examples is really actually the only tactic you need. In fact, I've had great success where I don't even really write instructions. I just throw in a bunch of examples, and it just learns from those examples.
It just knows what to do.
Yeah. So in my prompts, I had like 30 handcraft, like written, well crafted examples of how of what I like in an AI response that makes it sound human and makes it sound not like AI. So, for example, I went through and deleted all the M dashes, things like that. And I put those into the rally prompt, and that's what made it sound a lot more human and be less annoying and be less I guess like obviously ChatGPT. So that was like the secret sauce there, and that's true of pretty much every task. Like just if you just collect a lot of good examples of that task and you feed it into the prompt, then you're just going to do a better job. Even if you're not using the best models, it works really well even with the smaller models too. So that's like one of the main things you look at. The other thing that prompt engineers spend a lot of time on is not actually the prompt itself, but the evaluation of the prompt. What does good performance look like? What does bad performance look like? Can we build a test set of example questions and answers, and then if it predicts the right answer, then you know that the prompt has done a good job. It's very similar to marketing in that like the best marketers are spending, or best marketing teams are spending a lot of time on attribution. Because if you don't have good attribution, you can't really test, and if you can't really test, then you don't know whether one thing is working or not.
Exactly.
So it's very, very similar. If you're deep into marketing and you're data driven, you're technical, then you basically have all the exact skills that you would need to be a prompt engineer.
Interesting. Yeah, we are going through a kind of like an AI transformation or automation project internally as well in the company, and exactly what you just mentioned. Just giving those examples of what you want the output to be is good enough at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the results that have been you have seen happen for users of Rally. How are these teams actually translating some of these insights into results, essentially, right? Do you have
Yeah.
like a study you can share?
Yeah, so we're still pretty early. Like we've only been really live for the past 2 months, but
Okay.
I would say one of the main things I've seen is really just internal results of just like getting to decisions faster or iterating
Okay.
faster. So,
Right.
like for example, I write a monthly column for Every, which is a publication, AI publication. Dan Schipper's CEO, and I was talking to him and his editor Kate, and this was like just before I'd launched Rally, and I was running. I told him I could run my script for them because they were having this debate. Every is kind of unusual in a publication in that Dan also knows how to code as well as being a good journalist. So
Right.
they write software as well as so that they publish a blog article like kind of a Substack style publication, but they also published a podcast and also published software. So he was like, "What do you call that type of organization?" He wanted to call it, I think he wanted to call it meta media. And Kate was like, "No, we can't call it meta media. It has to be like something like multimodal." And there was a few other ideas around. And we ran it through Rally, and we saw, it was like it brought up a lot of good points. It said like you can't really use the word meta because Zuckerberg basically owns that word now, and people are going to associate you with Zuckerberg, and it's going to be extra confusing because they have their own AI model, and so upon seeing those answers, Dan was like, "Oh yeah, I get it now. I completely get the argument." And because it's like almost like a neutral third party, then it does help solve the debates. And that was actually what kind of made me want to build Rally. In that I thought, okay, well, yeah, it's very rare that a CEO changes their mind, right? And Dan is a good CEO, so like he is very open, but like like that's pretty rare that you have like the decision maker change their mind based on the results of an A/B test, right? And I think that it's even actually it's less intimidating than a normal A/B test or normal market research study because you can still ignore it. It's AI, right? So like if you really feel strongly that it's wrong, then go out and run a study to validate one way or the other, right? And in that way, I don't think that Rally is like a replacement for traditional testing or traditional research. I think it's really just a hypothesis formation thing, right? So if you can get to better answers, or if you can make decisions on, creative that you otherwise wouldn't have a chance to study, I think like that's where it really shines. But I think we're actually going to drive more revenue towards market research firms because their clients are going to be coming to them like, "Hey, we tested this in Rally. What do you think? We tested that in Rally. What do you think?" And they're probably going to be annoyed, but they'll I think once you see an interesting insight from Rally, then the next thing I hear from people is like, we have to go prove this now because if this is true, it could be really big.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm sure some people, obviously they're going to be skeptics always, right, in whatever you do, but is there like a roadmap in terms of helping alleviate some of these doubts? Like are you like is there like a feedback loop of validated data coming back into the platform maybe, or something like that?
Yeah, good question. I would say that the feedback that you get from the AI personas is already very good. In terms of like it nails the right topics, like the sort of topics that you would hear if you ran a real study, you would hear the same comments in Rally. So a lot of the focus right now is more about making it easier to integrate that into your workflow, so that you are getting the responses, for everything. So like it's not onerous to just whip out Rally in the meeting and say, "Let's just test it," and or like have that automatic as part of like every LinkedIn post. What I want to do is I want us to set up a API so that I can connect Zapier or N8N and then just like have everything I do just checked by Rally before it goes out, because so like that's kind of what we're focused on in the short term.
Right.
At the same time, we are doing a bunch of I call them like calibration projects where
Okay.
we are testing the different prompts we use. We're testing the different ways we create personas, and then we're running those experiments and then learning from them, and then that goes into the product. And we also blog about those as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's super powerful if you can have some kind of real world feedback loop into the system to validate some of these things and improve it on the fly. That would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not aiming to really convince the market researchers yet. We're engaging with them because it's interesting. But what we were looking for more is like people who have already decided that AI is useful, and like already heavy users of ChatGPT. And then they're like, I actually want something more than ChatGPT. I want like more of a diverse feedback. I want to save my audience and then keep coming back to it. So I think like that's actually our core customer at the minute.
Interesting. I like to always take a walk into the future. So essentially, like 2 years out, how do you see like this changing, right? Like in terms of AI and agentic workflows, for example, in this research space.
Yeah.
Do you see something like running autonomously? Someone like interpreting all the insights from these focus groups overnight and then automatically rewriting this ad copy and such like that? What's your take?
Yeah, good question. So I would say that AI agents actually will become a thing soon. It's been something that was promised multiple times in the past, and unfortunately, the models don't do that well after like a couple of turns. Even the best models, they get lost, they get stuck on things. They don't make the right decisions. I would say that's still like a research area.
Yeah.
But I'm like more and more convinced it will happen because the cost is coming down. 75% or something like each year. The models are getting smarter at the same time for that lower cost. So it's inevitable if progress continues. In 2 years' time, we're supposed to be at AGI, according to Sam Altman.
Yep.
So the clock is ticking. But no, seriously, I think even when we're at AGI, and AGI, the definition is artificial general intelligence. When AI is better than any human at a wide range of tasks, even when we're there, I think it actually might be more expensive than a human. Because I'm looking at stuff like GPT 4.5 is a very creative model. And we use that actually to write some of the more human sounding examples. But it costs $75 per million tokens. To put that in comparison, GPT-4 is like $3 per million tokens.
Right.
And then GPT-4 Mini is which is like the smallest model that still works well. Is like 50 cents per million tokens. So if you kind of extrapolate out, like say we get AGI, but it costs like hundreds or thousands of dollars a month. Like I think Sam Altman is talking about a $20,000 a month PhD level model. Then that's actually like more expensive than a human. And maybe it's better than a human, but I think there will still be a lot of tasks that we'll still need to do, and there'll be some things that humans are better at and some things AIs are better at. So I don't think we're being replaced even when we do get there.
Yeah, for sure. I think the AI companies are going to have to recoup their money somehow.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and who's going to pay them if nobody has a job?
Exactly. So awesome. So as a final segment, we like to do a quick lightning round. Couple of questions here. So what is like a KPI that you track within your platform before coffee?
Diversity of thought. We try and optimize for when the model says something unexpected that you couldn't have guessed from the question.
Interesting. And what's the most overrated research metric, I guess?
Most overrated research metric. I think all of the public benchmarks are massively
Okay.
overrated.
Yeah.
Like whenever they release a new model, they talk about how good it is at different data sets,
Yeah.
and none of them are like related in any way to the real world work that I'm doing. So I
Please.
basically ignore them, and and I constantly find I'm using models like Claude that doesn't do as well, or like Gemini, like doesn't seem to do as well on the public benchmarks, but works very, very well on my private benchmarks.
Interesting. And what's the AI tool that you're obsessed with this quarter?
Yeah, AI tool I'm obsessed with. I was using Google LM Notebook a lot over the past
My
few
favorite.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, I would say Descript is one
Okay.
I've been using more recently, and I'll say that just because I don't hear enough people shouting about it. Like
Yeah.
I'm terrible at. I've never done video editing, right? Like I'm not a creative person necessarily. Like I always come from a data background,
Right.
and the fact that I can just like chop up the video, I can hit like one button and it removes all the ums and ahs from the video. You can edit by just selecting some text and deleting, and then you can even like record your own voice and it dubs it with AI. I have a really bad problem of like I never look at the camera, and there's a eye
Eye
contact
correction.
feature, which is
I
kind
love
of
that
creepy.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're actually like
but
a
it looks great. Yeah,
OG AI editing tool, right? They did
yeah.
the school stuff before AI came about. Yeah.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I think it's the founder from Groupon, which
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I used to be in the daily deal space when I was
Yeah.
working at Travelzoo. So
Ah,
yeah, I was like, also kind of, I thought it was cool that he's like done something completely different.
Awesome. All right, guys. And that's a wrap for this edition of the Full Funnel Podcast. Mike, thanks a ton for sharing your insights and sparking these fresh ideas on how to think about research. It's been a pleasure having you. To everyone listening, I appreciate you spending a part of your day with us. If you got any value from this conversation, please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And yeah, send it on to a teammate or a colleague who it might be useful to. And also, please do follow Mike on LinkedIn and X. I'll drop the links in the description. And we'll be back next week with another guest pushing boundaries of AI. Until then, keep testing, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.